Hey, welcome to the channel. This is Dr. Keisha, and today we're going to talk about moral failure. We're going to discuss Pastor Robert Morris. Some of you may know about him, some of you may not know about him. I've never heard of him, but I'm learning about him with regards to this recent, what was it, the Christian Post. We'll share the article in just a moment and we'll go into it. But there was a reporter, a senior reporter by the name of Leonardo Blair, that reported in the Christian Post regarding Pastor Robert Morris confessing moral failure after a woman that is now an adult claims to be M-word, Molesting, at the age of 12. All right, so let's have the conversation. This kind of goes along with the other series that we've had with sexual abuse and that sort of thing, and people abusing their authority. This kind of go along. It's a continuation of that, and unfortunately, it is sad that this goes on. This goes on in our society, whether it's in or out of the church. And what I need for us to understand is that, yes, it's bad when it happens in the church, but it's bad when it happens, period. And I think that we need to kind of understand that this is definitely a sinful thing, a sinful nature thing, and that people that come to church, doesn't matter what roles that they play in church, also struggle with very similar issues, regardless of whatever role that they play. And that's not to say, and we'll talk about the role of the leader. We'll definitely incorporate what the role of a leader is, what the requirements are as far as a leader is concerned. Can leaders be reinstated after these types of things? How we should manage these things. And I'll share my thoughts with regards to that. But I think the first thing that we should share is the actual article. We can go right into it. The way that it's framed initially makes it seem as if um, the pastor kind of told on himself, but I don't think that that's like how it happened. So let me go ahead and share the article with you, and then we can go into the commentary. All right, so let me just release that. All right, and so you'll see here, this is a christianpost.com. You can find this article in your, at your leisure. This may trigger some people that have experienced some type of SA or some type of molestation of sort. If you've experienced that growing up, this may be a trigger for you, and or it may not. But I just wanted to at least put a warning there that this may trigger you. This is a recent article, so it actually was posted on today. And so again, it says here, moral failure. I think what triggered me about this, and the reason why we're having this conversation, is the moral failure part. I don't know why they're deciding to frame it that way, but in my opinion, I feel like that what he did was horrific, and the phrase moral failure is downplaying what he did. And so I know that it's in quotes because I believe that that's the language that the church used, or the language that this particular pastor Robert used. I think that's why it's in quotes, because that's what they're calling it. And I strongly disagree. And to me, even though they're claiming that the incident happened when he was in his 20s, I don't know how old he is today, but I'm imagining he's in his 60s. I'm imagining he's in his 60s. So let's say it happened 40 years ago. I feel like a person who's really gone through the process of, being rebuked, sitting themselves down, going through counseling, accepting accountability, would not call this, what he did, a moral failure. They wouldn't call it that. They would call it what it is. And because again, we have to consider the now woman that was a girl at the time of the incident. We have to consider how she feels about this because she was the one that was violated. And I think by downplaying it, I think it also triggered her as well. So let's go into the article and then we can definitely have the conversation. All right, so that's the title there. Um, the senior reporter is mentioned here again by Mr. Blair, and this is Robert Morris. He's the senior pastor of the Gateway Church in South Lake, Texas. And this particular photo said that he was speaking at a gathering in 2016. Robert Morris, the founding pastor of the Gateway Church in South Lake, Texas, which attracts an estimated 100,000 worshipers weekly, has confessed to inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady more than 35 years ago. Okay, so maybe he's not as old as I thought he was. He might still be in his 60s, but more than 35 years ago, while he was a young pastor, after um, a woman accused him of sexually abusing her over multiple years, beginning when she was age 12. So there's a few things that we need to understand, and that's why comprehension skills are important. Number one, he was still a pastor when this happened. It's not like he wasn't pastoring when this incident happened or the incidents happened. He was a young pastor during this time, and the woman accusing him says that the abuse was over multiple years. So it just wasn't a one and done. It was when she was 12 and beyond. All right. So I'm sure it was after she, started having her cycle. She was still having to deal with the sexual abuse from this pastor. Let's read. When I was in my early 20s, this is according to Robert Morris, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady in a home where I was staying in. Um, it was kissing and petting and not intercourse, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. Moore said in a statement to the Christian Post after Gateway Church was asked about the allegations. So he fessed up to the allegations that were reported. There's obviously a theme that's happening. People are feeling more comfortable coming out and talking about these types of things. And I say kudos to all the victims because there's a lot of people that believe that you should take it to your grave because of who it is, right? The person that did the offense, because of who that person is. Take it to your grave. This person has a lot of gifts and talents. It could, this person brings a lot of money to the church. This person is this and that, or whether it's the church or whether it's business or whether it's a whatever segment of the population that this person is well liked and received. If it's an incident or incidents that have happened, they want to cover it up if they like the person or if there's a benefit to having this person still operating, you know what I'm saying, in their gifts and in their abilities. They're going to want to cover up. And I've seen that happen. Um, my years of being a part of, church and part of ministries, I've seen certain people cover up other people's indiscretion. And I'm not saying that there aren't moments where, God will cover things or allow things to be covered. And I believe in those instances, if something is being covered, it means that you've done you've done what was appropriate, the confession, you've had counseling. If there was, reporting to the police, again, was willing to participate in whatever, the punishment was. You took that on, and no. I can understand concealing that if they were willing to submit to whatever was appropriate for the crime. You know what I'm saying? Um, then okay. All right. Now, when it comes to, abuse of minors, that should be reported. I don't think that should be concealed. I don't think that that should be hidden. I think that that should be made known. I know they do have a registry and things of that nature. And I don't think this incident was even reported to the police either. Why the parents opted not to, I'm not sure. But I don't believe the incident was reported to the police. And I don't know what, you know, the what the law states in Texas in terms of the time frame by which reportings can be made, or whether, maybe it's a civil, issue that can be opened because of this. I'm not sure what the laws are in Texas, but whenever you're, again, assaulting or abusing a minor, I believe, pastors are mandated reporters, teachers are mandated reporters, anyone dealing with the youth, social workers, doctors, anyone dealing with the youth are mandated reporters. So to be honest, though he is the pastor, whoever was aware that this happened, they were obligated to report this to the police or to the welfare social services. But I don't believe that there was no reporting, or we wouldn't be just hearing about this 35 years later. So I feel like a lot of people have failed that young lady. Um, and so let's go into it and see who knew what, or whatever information we can kind of gather from this article. Started abusing her, but abused her multiple times. That's what I'm saying. Covering up something that continues to happen over and over and over again is not the way to go. I don't really care how gifted a person is. You know what I mean? I don't care how much money they bring to the church or how many people they draw. I don't really care. Or, and it could be, what Puff is going through right now, right? All the assault and stuff that has happened over the course of years, all these Diddy parties and stuff. Like, it doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what lane. If the same stuff keeps happening over and over and over and over and over again, and whether we're hearing it by way of rumors or whatever the case may be, something has to be done to shut this stuff down. And I believe that's why these things happened, that these things do happen and they're covered up, because the person that does these types of things, the person that is the abuser, they get away with it. So they feel emboldened. Who's going to check me? Nobody's going to. And if, let's say, law was involved or somebody that tried to report it, depending on how powerful they are, they'll try to make that person go away, whether it's paying them off or whatever. And so a person can get to the point in their stardom or in their authority where they feel like they're untouchable, and they will continue doing whatever. And during this time, obviously, he was, in his early 20s, a young preacher, a young pastor during his time, but he still was a person of authority. And to say that, confessing that it happened over, multiple times over the years, one can even conclude that she may not have been the only one. Because if you're going to get away with it over here, then again, if you have a serious problem, then more than likely it's going to happen later on down the line with someone else. And so how we manage these types of things as believers or whatever, that's important. And I feel like a lot of us have dropped the ball, whether, in the case of Cassie and Diddy, or whether in the case in this situation or others. We drop the ball when we, again, give people passes for continuously doing the same thing over and over and over again. And when we give them too much grace and too much leeway, I think we really drop the ball in those instances. And then think about all the people that are left behind picking up the pieces, like the young girl, now a woman that's, having nightmares or night terrors or whatever. Because obviously this person has gotten away with, essentially, the M word, and there's been no repercussion of any kind. And I think in the article, I think there will be conversation about her saying that, can there be some monetary compensation so that she can go to counseling? And I think that she was even denied that. So Yeah, this is really bad. So let's continue to read. When I was in my early 20s, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady in a home where I was saying it was kissing and petting and not intercourse, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. Moore said in a statement to the Christian Post after Gateway Church was asked about the allegations. In March 1987, the situation was brought to light and it was confessed and repented of. I submitted myself to the elders of Shady Grove Church and the young lady's father. They asked me to step out of ministry and receive counseling and freedom ministry, which I did. Since that time, I have walked in purity and accountability in this area, Morris added. Again, he received counseling, but what about the little girl? Obviously, he was reinstated back based on his word of walking in purity and accountability. Let's continue to read. He explained that he returned to ministry in March 1989, 2 years after his abuse. Let me see, 1987, 1989, March. So he was on a hiatus for 2 years after his abuse. After the abuse was exposed with the blessing of the survivor's father and elders of his church, he further noted that he and his wife met with the survivor and her family in October 1989. Now, what needs to also be added to to the context of this, he wasn't a single 20-year-old pastor. He was a married 20-year-old pastor. So when he sexually abused this young lady starting at age 12 and beyond, because he continued doing it, he was married. Okay. Now, again, we'll talk about what the Bible says, requirements, and all that other stuff in just a moment. But this is something that we need to note. And again, he said that, once this came to the forefront and he had the hiatus and he went through the process of, dealing with his issues and etc., that he was reinstated after 2 years with the blessing of the survivor's father and the elders of the church. Let's continue to read. I asked for forgiveness and they graciously forgave me, Morris said. Morris's accuser, Cindy, first told the Wartburg Watch that he began sexually abusing her on December 25th, which is again going to be something that's going to be a marker for her because it was on Christmas. So it's going to be something that she'll forever remember. 1982. So let's go back. Um, the situation was brought to light in 1987. So if he began abusing her in 1982, that was 5 years. Let's put it all in context. 5 years, this pastor, married pastor, young pastor, but yet married pastor, yet an adult pastor, because he was in his 20s and she was 12. All right. 5 years. Whew. All right. And continued with the abuse for 4.5 years after that. We can round it up to 5. When contacted by CP on Saturday, um, when contacted by Cindy on Saturday, the 54-year-old grandmother confirmed the details in a report, but insisted that she was no young lady when Morris began abusing her. She was 12 years old, right? I'm, of course, just appalled. Okay, this is the victim. She said to CP, she told CP on Saturday about his description of her as a young lady. And this is the victim's reply to that. I was 12 years old. I was a little girl. I was a very innocent little girl. And he brought me in, and he brought into our home and he was brought into our home. So he was the pastor sleeping in her parents' home. He was brought in, allowed to stay, him and his family, or him and his wife. I don't know if they had children at the time, but him and his wife were allowed to stay in their home. It says here again, he and his wife Debbie, and I guess they did have a little boy Josh, and trusted and preached at the church that my dad helped start, and then began grooming all of us to do this, which took me decades to wrap my brain around as an adult, she said. All right, so this pastor was sent, he came, whatever the case may have been, to start a work in their community, and her dad helped him build the work. He was very instrumental in helping him start the work, the ministry, right? The pastor, which is the gentleman we're talking about, um, was married and had a little boy during that time. And so he was abusing her, according to her, for 4.5 years, but I'm rounding it up to 5. Okay. He was abusing her for 4.5 years. So starting at 12, that meant, let's do the math. If she was at 12, 4.5 years, that would make her 16 and a half, almost 17 years old when he stopped. Now, he said that he did not have sexual intercourse. Let's continue to read and get her side of it. It went on for many years, 4.5 to be exact. He says there was no sexual intercourse, but he did not, but he did touch every part of my body. This is the victim, and inserted his fingers into me, which I understand now is considered a form of rape by instrumentation. So though he did not use his private parts, he did violated her. Okay. It is, according to her, now that she understands that it is a form of rape. So whether it's a teenager or whatever the case may be, when you are using your finger to, you know, in, you know, and you're inserting your female into someone's genitals, and they're young, and it's non-consensual, then that is a form of rape. Okay. Some people again may try to downplay this, but no, this was a form of rape. It is a form of rape, and it's something that it should have been taken very seriously. Okay, this is the victim speaking. I was an innocent 12-year-old girl who knew nothing about sexual behavior. So I'm assuming that, they were believers. Obviously, the father accepted that pastor into his home with his family and helped to start a ministry along with the pastor. So, being a believer, most believers, especially their children, are pretty much sheltered when it comes to those types of things, whether it's the stuff that they watch on TV and all the other stuff. And when you're considering the 80s isn't what we are experiencing today. Like nowadays, a 12-year-old would probably have the mind of a 16 or 18-year-old, depending on whatever it is that they're exposed to. If they're exposed to social media, the internet, or whatever, they might have seen all kinds of stuff because of technology. During that time, we didn't have that. So there can be restrictions on what those children watch, which it could be very wholesome programming. I'm sure the circles that, she ran it, they probably were dropped off and picked up, or very monitored life, very sheltered life during that time, especially in the 80s. I mean, it wasn't, what we're experiencing today. Very, very different life that she lived. And then they were obviously Christians, and so, they probably didn't listen to a whole lot of different type of music. They probably weren't watching different types of shows. And yeah, so I can see her being a very naive, not really knowing or understanding what is going on. I can definitely see that as being the truth, being of what time it was in terms of the year, and then of the type of household that she was being raised in. They were devout Christians, and she probably was not exposed to anything inappropriate like this. According to the reporting, it says that in her report to the Wartburg Watch, she and her family first met Morris at a youth revival in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1981, when he was a 20-year-old traveling evangelist. at the time. He was married at 20, which was relatively young, but obviously, especially in Christian circles back then, they got married young. They married young. So he was a 20-year-old. He was married, his wife Debbie, and they had their son Joshua. She said Morris began preaching at her church regularly on Sundays after he was invited to do a youth revival in their hometown in Oklahoma. Her family and Morris's quickly became friends. They were invited into their home and often went on trips together. Now, on the fateful Christmas night, like I said, being that it was Christmas, is going to be probably forever scarred impressed in her memory. Uh, Clemashire said the safety of the relationship with Morris and his family ended for her when they visited her home. So I guess they allowed them to come and visit or whatever, to stay in their home and that sort of thing. The Morris family came to visit and spend some time there. Cindy sat in the back seat of the car with Robert. He asked her to visit him in his room that night. I'm assuming when everybody was asleep, including his wife, her parents, their children. She shared a room with her sister, Cindy. An innocent 12-year-old girl movingly described what she was wearing. She was wearing pink pajamas with bloomer pants. She wore underwear underneath. She had a snap up robe on, the Wartburg Watch said. She thought nothing of visiting a family friend in their room. He told her to lie down on her back and touched her stomach. He told her to close her eyes, and then he touched her breast and felt under her panties. He warned her, never tell anyone about this because it will ruin everything, the reporter noted. Clemenshire claims Morris repeatedly abused her in Texas and Oklahoma, and he often told his wife that he was merely counseling her during the abuse. So I guess he was using counseling as an excuse, which makes it even worse because now he's using his authority as a cloak to continue abusing her for like the next 4.5 years. When she turned 16, Clemenshire said Morris would take her out of his car and try to have sexual intercourse. So it began to escalate even further after the 4.5 years. So he was grooming her, obviously, after she turned 16. I just find that, I mean, I get being abused and, him using some scare tactics like don't tell anybody because we're going, I'm going to get in trouble. You're going to get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. But at 16, taking her out in his car and try to have there had to be a reason to lure her into the car. I mean, obviously he became trusted and maybe she didn't quite understand. Like, I don't know, but to take her out in the car at 16, um, that's interesting. But the mere fact that he tried to have sexual intercourse with her, but obviously I don't think he was successful, but the mere fact that he tried. By this time, Morris was a pastor at Shady Grove Church, which would eventually become Gateway Church, Grand Prairie campus, the reporter said. Clemenshire eventually confided what was happening to her to a close friend who encouraged her to tell her family. When her father found out, he told the lead pastor at Shady Grove Church that if Morris didn't get out of ministry, he would get the police involved. And that threat forced Morris to step away for 2 years. Morris, who returned to, I guess, that region with his wife and tele-evangelist James Robeson, they told Clemenshire's father that he wanted to return to ministry. And at that point, her father washed his hands of Morris and no longer interacted with him. The the Wartburg Watch said the survivor made it clear that Morris did not get her father's blessing to return to ministry. So remember, he said that he got the father's blessing and the elder's blessing before, during that time after the 2 years to return to ministry. She said, "My father never gave his blessing to Robert returning to ministry!" Exclamation. "My father told him he's lucky he didn't kill him. I am mortified that he is telling the world my dad gave his blessing. Of course, we forgive because we are called to biblically forgive those who sinned against us, but that does not mean he is supposed to go on without repercussions," she said. Clemenshire explained that she retained an attorney 2005, a civil suit, to file a civil suit, but Morris's attorney suggested she called the abuse on herself. She caused the abuse. Isn't that something? So the abuser's attorney said to her that she's the one that caused the abuse. The little girl. Now she's an adult, but the little girl, when she was little, she caused it because she was flirtatious. She said she asked for 50,000 to cover the cost of counseling stemming from the abuse, and she said they offered her 25,000 if she signed a non-disclosure agreement, but she refused. For years, she exclaimed to CP that she's been warning churches and pastors who would listen to her story about Morris because she doesn't believe she's the only one who suffered his abuse. She also argued that he shouldn't be serving in ministry and should step down. I don't think he ever should be allowed to be in ministry. He would never allow someone to go teach in a school. We would rather never allow anyone to go teach in a school, work in a daycare, be a doctor. If anybody had done these things, I have a very difficult time believing I'm the only one, Clemenshire said. The elders at Gateway Church told CP in a statement that Morris was transparent with them about his past, and they believe he has been biblically restored to ministry. Pastor Robert has been open and forthright about a moral failure, and that's the part that really gets underneath my skin. For he had over 35 years ago, when he was in his 20s and prior to him starting Gateway Church, he has shared publicly from the pulpit the proper biblical steps he took in his lengthy restoration process. They said 2 years was his lengthy restoration process. The 2-year restoration process was closely administered by the elders at Shady Grove Church and included him stepping out of ministry during that period while receiving professional counseling and freedom ministry counseling. They said, since the resolution of this 30-year-old matter, there may have been no other moral failures. They said there have been no. Pastor Robert has walked in purity and he has placed accountability measures and people in his life. The matter has been properly disclosed to church leadership. And that's the article ends there. Let's discuss. First of all, I agree 100%, 1000% with the victim. Absolutely correct. If he would have been a teacher, I'm an educator, we're mandated reporters. If it would have been done in school, if it would have been done anywhere else, doctor's office, social, it doesn't matter. You would have had to report it, and then the law would have had taken the steps. And then from there, he would have been put on a registry and would have been limited in what he can do. And that includes pastoring and in ministry when it comes to children. Yeah, I'm really disappointed with the whole thing. I am not completely convinced that he didn't do it again. And it's amazing how these people, those that are speaking on his behalf, are saying that basically he didn't do anything. He can do anything after that. I just really have a hard time believing that. I really don't believe in that. What do you say, Shauna? Yeah, absolutely. He should have went to jail. This was obviously 30 something years ago, but I really believe that if it would have came to light, then it would have, and now that it is coming to light, because it was just reported today, that other people that remember what was done to them in their youth, if there was other folks like her, hopefully they come forward just to prove that, because it would trigger me if I was someone that was abused by him and then they're saying, oh, that was just a one and done type thing. And even the mere fact that it happened for years, like how could you just say we're not going to tell the police, just go to counseling and not preach for 2 years? You were calculated. This was not a one incident. You kind of fell by the wayside and you were tempted by this girl that you claim was being flirtatious, and all of a sudden you threw the Bible away and all just whatever, all types of everything out the window just to touch this child. And then that's the first time you never did it again. That wasn't the situation. This was something that you obviously was grooming this little girl, and you did penetrate her with your finger, and based on her side of the story you were trying to groom her so that you could become sexual with her, but obviously she fought it because she didn't allow it to happen, being now 16 at the time when he tried to be more sexual with her. She fought back. But yeah, this is pathetic. I believe that he should have went to jail. Absolutely. We just said you should have threatened. Hey Pam, thanks for tuning in. Should have threatened and called the cops. Yeah, CPS, absolutely. I 1000% agree. It's sad that abusers hide and are protected. Yeah. Yeah, the church protects pastors and their moral and criminal unethical behavior. Exactly. I know this is off of the, what has come out with Tony Evans and him admitting to some type of indiscretion in the past, and he claimed that it was sin, but it was non-criminal. But this would definitely fall under the guise of criminal. And I really do believe that all ministries, regardless of how beloved the person is by most folks, should report. They are mandated reporters. They should report this. Dad and mom should have reported this. I get it. No one wants to, because you're made to feel like you're the bad guy when you're having to report a spiritual leader, a pastor, a minister, an evangelist, a travel. It's like they have this work to do, this mantle, this, you know what I mean? This huge responsibility of spreading the gospel. But in the middle of spreading the gospel, if you're literally ruining someone's life or altering their life forever because you have crossed lines, I'm sorry, to me, what you're doing for God is it's of none effect. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, people may be getting saved under your ministry, but in terms of you as the vessel, you're polluted because of your inappropriate behavior, because you're doing all this stuff in private. God is not pleased with you. Just because people is pushing you and propping you up, and they're benefiting off your gifts and talents, that's cool. But God is not smiling on you, knowing what you're doing in the dark and what you have done in the dark for 4.5 years. So I don't know why we feel this sense of obligation to say, oh, I can't stop him from preaching because that person's going to, if they die in their sins, they're going to hell anyway. And what you're doing is you're literally sacrificing your child, or any other child for that matter, that has gotten abused by him, that hasn't come to light, for the sake of ministry, quote unquote. Now, I'm a minister, so I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to hold you. But you best believe I stand firm on this. If there is a violation of this sort and someone did break the law, they will be turned over to the police. I'm sorry, I will not cover their sins. They're going to have to this now to this. No, even if it was a one timer, guess what? We're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. There has to be something. You can't just turn a blind eye. I feel so sorry for the victims. My heart really truly goes out to her, because again, he's attracting an estimated 100,000 worshipers weekly. And of course, they don't even know. Like I said, everyone has a right to know if you violated a minor by law. Everyone has a right to know. Why? It protects you. Even if you are the ones, even if you're the predator, it protects you because they're going to make sure that you're not going to be around any young people. It protects the victims or the potential victims because they can't be around you. They won't be around you. So it protects all parties involved. And if you happen to be called to ministry, then listen, go minister to somebody in a halfway house. Go minister to some people that are locked up in prisons. They need to hear the gospel. Go minister to some prostitutes. Go do street ministry. But as far as pastoring and having to deal with families and children, to me, that person, they forfeited their right to that responsibility. Now, when it comes to forgiveness, should we forgive those that are believers? No, what the good book says. Yes, we have to forgive. But I do agree with the victim. I do agree with the survivor. Yeah, I do agree with her that there still is, again, you have to reap what you sow. You have to, there is, you're going to have to, again, there are repercussions, as she forestated. It doesn't mean that you get away with murder. It doesn't mean you get away with this and you can continue on with your life when you've literally brought my life to an end. Now she's having to live with this and she was never compensated. And she was never compensated to so that she could get the counseling so that she can focus on her healing. So I just wanted to bring this to light because I think that it needs to be brought to light and it happens more often than not, unfortunately. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the church or out of the church, this happens a lot. And I feel like that we need to deal with these matters a lot better than what we have done in the past. That as mandated reporters and as a family, I don't care if it's a family member, I don't care if it's someone that I really, really care about, that I guess you have to do the right thing. I believe that God is going to also hold us accountable to do the right thing. This was not a youth, he wasn't a youth, and then not like two youth people were doing inappropriate things. He was not only a 20-year-old pastor, but he was also married. So consider the adultery component, which is something that they're not even talking about. The mere fact that he went out on his marriage to again do inappropriate things with a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old. I wonder what his wife thinks about all of these things that have come to light. I'm assuming she was made aware of it, but probably not at the fullness of the extent that she's telling her truth, that he did try to sleep with her. And I believe her. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. And I really do hope that, again, the purpose is to bring this to light that if you're in a situation where something like this comes, number one, do your due diligence, believe the victims, and do your due diligence. To me, it's to automatically not believe them or to assume that they're lying if they're children. If somebody is showing you some type of proof, whether it be your children or a child or whatever the case may be, or even an adult that has been essayed, if they're and they have proof to it and you've done your due diligence to, to at least get the information, whatever, I think that we have to do the right thing, and that is to report it, and that is to turn these people in. I think we've tried to handle it to say, oh, we'll give them a pass and maybe they'll stop, or we'll give them a stern talking to and maybe they'll turn. Obviously, that's not happening. Obviously, that's not helping. That's not helping the predator. It's not helping them, and it's definitely not helping the victims. So obviously, we got to do something different, right? What do you say? Wife thinks the girl seduced, right? And I think that's how they're spinning it. They're spinning it like a 12-year-old girl that seduced this man. Get out of here. You know what I mean? For all those many years, come on. And you know what? Deep down in her heart, I'm sure that she doesn't believe that to be true. And again, if he's gotten away with that one, then I'm sure there might be others, other victims out there. So I'm really hoping that, people see this And if anyone was violated or touched or inappropriately by this man, that it comes to light, because it's just, and it's just sad that, that they're trying to flip this, and make her feel bad. And what about her soul? Like, seriously, what about her soul? What about her consciousness? What about her mind? And her emotional state. Obviously, again, he got the counseling, but she never got what she needed. It's just sad across the board. But I just wanted to share this, because I just think that in lieu of everything that's coming to the forefront, that I think more people need to report it, because maybe that will scare the next person. Maybe that will cause the next person to think twice or three times about doing something in fear that they may get discovered. Or if somebody that's wrestling with these things may actually get the help before they, go along with whatever it is that they're feeling and then just suffer the consequences later. Maybe this will, like, put fear in the heart that you'll lose it all. I'm going to do another video after this. I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out to you. I'm going to do another video about Pastor Carl and Laura Lutz. I'm going to talk about them and their situation where he was sat down, or he sat himself down, or whatever. I think he said he was caught, but he got sat down because he committed adultery and he was doing some inappropriate things in the church. I'm going to have a conversation about that one. That one is different because he really did hold himself accountable. And so I'm going to do that live probably shortly after this. So again, shout out to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hate to have these conversations, but this is an ongoing conversation about, abuse of authority, sexual abuse, and all those types of things, grooming. And these are the conversations that I've been having. I do counseling. I do counseling as well as coaching. And so I do offer that to those that need it. Maybe perhaps you are a survivor of this, and, maybe you can afford a typical therapist. Um, I can definitely tell you to reach out to me, and then we can try to work something out. But counseling is definitely important. Knowing it's not your fault, no matter how they're spinning it, it's definitely not your fault, especially if you're young. Even if you did feel some kind of way, you were enticed. It is not your fault. That person was an adult and he kept on doing it. So it wasn't like it was a one and done type situation. And so therefore, you matter. How you feel matters. Your health matters. Mental health, emotional health, it matters. And so we're here to help. All right. So don't forget to smash that like button. Feel free to leave a comment. I don't know if you have been a survivor of something like this. Like I said, for some folks, this may be a trigger because of the details of the story. But I'm definitely going to keep everybody lifted in prayer, especially for those that need it the most. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channels. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Thank you again for tuning in. Bye.